Hello, my friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family. So, guys, it's been a while since we've been live. We did just one, maybe about a month ago now, and haven't been able to get things rolling technically, but it looks like we're up, and I'm hoping it's going to stay up. There's been so much going on right now. Obviously, the big thing going on right now, well, there's a lot of earth changes things going on, but we have the coup underway in Venezuela. And that's what basically I wanted to start talking about and mostly cover, because this could be huge. This could be real huge. You know, this could be that line in the sand that's been drawn. And we'll see, you know, if this coup works and Maduro is out, it's possible that, you know, we won't have a WW3 from this anyway. If the coup doesn't work, or it's really prolonged, and the U.S. gets tempted to get in there militarily, if they're not already, then that definitely raises the tensions and raises the possibility of a global conflict, which so many people feel is coming. It's just, we feel it. You just kind of know it. There's such a heaviness in the air right now. The Schumann resonance is going crazy again. And, it reflects the consciousness and everything that's going on the planet. And in the planet and energetically as well. So I hope you guys could hear me well. Yeah, there's been warnings going on. We'll see what this ends up being, but it really feels like this could be the start of something much bigger. So you guys could hear me, but there's some echo. Let's see if we put the mic a little farther away. Is that any better? Yeah, this is the first time I've been able to use OBS Studio in well over a month. Yeah, 10 seconds to midnight, that is right. We are most definitely in trying times. So here we see, Maduro, well, he's got his opposition there in Guaido, and he's calling on the troops to oust him. And I gotta tell you, I watched something that was just horrible to watch. It's this right here. And so this is off of the Sun. And I have all the links for you guys. And yeah, this is just a brutal act. You got basically these armored vehicles coming down the street. People are just throwing whatever they can at them and doing no damage to the vehicles. And then all of a sudden, one of the vehicles right here just makes a big turn and just plows into people. Just running right over them. And it's just such a brutal act to see. You wonder who could do those things. I really don't think I could. You never know what you're capable of until you're in somebody else's shoes. But at the same time, it's like, who could do those type of things? It's really just a very evil situation that we're seeing going on down there. And the thing that hits me is so many people are much more awake than we've ever been. And, from everybody I've talk to. And of course, we're in a very awake community. So, we know what's really going on here. It just seems so obvious. It's all about the resources. It's about the oil and the gold and greed. But also, perhaps the deeper thing here is really wanting to create that big global conflict, which, of course, that will get the military machinery of the world just cranked up to the, ninth degree there. And as we talked about before, there's big profits in war, and it's a sick mindset that views the world that way and that would use people's lives that way, but that's what we've had. Unfortunately, that's the case. Okay, so now we should turn the volume up, because I was trying to get rid of the echo. I'm just glad to be able to do this because I haven't actually been able to go live because of technical issues. And with the demonetization of the channel, like this video is not being monetized because pretty much almost giving up on the idea of that. As are so many others. I've listened to Richie from Boston and all. It's time for us to just recognize that, the way of life for truthers is gone. So we gotta live with the echo, or we could just stop the broadcast. So that's the way it is, because I'm not going to be able to fix it. So what we got going on here, this really could turn into the beginning of WW3, but let's hope not. So he came out in some footage, and it showed him surrounded by people in military uniforms claiming that he had already received the support of the Venezuelan army, going on to call for the final phase of the protests. Politician stressed that the people of Venezuela would be fighting in a nonviolent struggle to assume the competencies of the government. According to the politician, he filmed a video at La Calora Air Force Base, which Reuters reported that he had been spotted on a Caracas highway next to a military base. So the last time Guaido appealed to the Venezuelans was just before a massive blackout in the country, which, according to the government, was caused by sabotage at a major power plant. Who knows? They might have blackouts coming soon here as well with everything going on. I'm sure that's probably going to be the case. So this is the video. This is off the New York Times, where he's giving the speech. And of course, the Trump administration and everybody else that's part of the whole big machine that we talk about and we know about has backed Guaido since he first declared himself interim president in January. And it's sad because we know how badly the Venezuelan people have been suffering. And really, in many areas throughout Central America, there's a lot of unrest right now. Nicaragua is in bad shape right now as well. So Maduro is saying that the military is still on his side. This is Sky News. Juan Guaido has to overcome corrupt elites' interest in maintaining status quo. A corrupt crony elite running the organs of the state, the military intelligence and police commanders stand and fall with Maduro. Coup or opposition overreach? It's too early to say. This looks different from the surges of opposition-led unrest that we have seen before. But as this article says, not yet different enough to make Venezuela's dictators sweat too much. So, the danger is if this becomes protracted and, it's just a matter of, do other people get involved? Does the U.S. send in troops? Does the UK do so as well? As you see, hospitals are so starved of resources that many die from conditions that would be routinely treated elsewhere. And, it's just the embargoes, um, all the things that really the powers that be have done to just clamp down and make life so miserable for Venezuelans, to get them to basically be ready to overthrow Maduro at the expense of the suffering of the people. But, this is how this world has been all throughout time. As we've talked about before, we look at the medieval ages and you have your lords up in their castles, living very well. And, the peasants are the ones that are always conscripted to go into the army and go fight each other. And so many times, the ones running the show just, escape unharmed and then just come back and do it all again with a new army. And David's talking about this could be the first trumpet. And, the symbolism, trumpet. And if you guys saw the video I did on the Super Bowl halftime show, the symbolism was mind-blowing in there. Just absolutely mind-blowing. They had like the SpongeBob characters and they were blowing trumpets. You had meteors coming down from the sky. All this symbolism that pointed to, in my opinion, war, and actually war that's going to, be centered around the U.S. But they always project these things. There's always this symbolism we could find. So as it says here, recent presidential elections in Venezuela are widely regarded to have been rigged. Yeah. More than 50 countries, including Britain and America, have accepted Mr. Guaido's position. He's young, charismatic, and able to overcome the internal fighting that has bedeviled Venezuela's opposition politics in the past. He's able to mobilize tens of thousands onto the streets of Venezuelan cities, but he has not been able to persuade the military or security agencies to join him so far. The Maduro regime has pampered a corrupt crony elite running the organs of the state. So, not that Maduro's any good, but it's kind of like the video pot calling the kettle black. Sure, there tends to be corruption in just about every regime that we see all around the globe, unfortunately. But we know the bigger picture. It's just so obvious. Jason says, I think this time it'll be our shores that get touched. And I agree. I've seen it, seen it in dreams, as well as so many others have seen it. And it feels like we're very close to that. And definitely tense times that we are living in. So yeah, I didn't monetize this, and I got all the links for you guys. This is obviously what we're looking at. Maduro, president of Venezuela since 2013, successor to former president Hugo Chavez, leader of the United Socialist Party of Venezuela. And Juan Guaido is the self-proclaimed president of Venezuela. He's 35, opposition leader, president of Venezuela's National Assembly. He's supported by the U.S., Colombia, UK, and the European Union. And there are live streams going, from RT here. And really, it looks like it's just, from everything I've seen, yeah, you don't see any real military fighting real military. It's just basically people throwing things at soldiers for the most part, or even just throwing things at where you can't really see what they're throwing at. So if they are unable to get at least a portion of the military behind them, more than likely this would probably fizzle out. But you got to realize there probably is infiltration going on. Um, covert ops as well. So anything could be expected. Yes, as somebody just said, it's both sides are being played, and that's what people are waking up to the fact. Because, we have obviously Russia and China, Iran, they're all going to be backing Maduro. And then, of course, you have the US and the UK and most of the EU backing Guaido. But at the top levels, in many people's opinion, all the chess pieces are being controlled by really the same people at the very top. And it's really just what we were just talking about. You just basically conscript the peasants, the average people of the world, to go serve in their militaries. You make them feel they're doing something good and patriotic. You wind them all up, and then set them loose on each other while you sit back and watch it all play out. Captain Nobody says Trump is NWO just like all of them, and I think that's been a hard thing for people to, really accept for some people. I mean, I've gotten messages from people that have said, why are you saying that about him? He's such a good man. He's getting rid of, all the bad ones, and you're gonna see the trials of the Clintons and the Obamas and all this going on. But here we are. We're almost into another election cycle. We really are in another election cycle. There's been no major arrests. The detention centers and things like that. My gut says it's for people that are perhaps people that right now are losing their First Amendment rights, yours included. Anybody that's going to be trying to wake people up to the reality of what's really going on here. I don't think it's going to be for other NWO people, if you want to use that terminology. Not at all. So, yeah, in my opinion, yeah, Trump is playing a role. And had talked about that again in a different video. And, it's just amazing. Look at that. Trumpets, right? Trump, Pence. The symbolism there. Make America great again. Babylon the Great. A lot of people have really caught on to all the little symbols that are there. But with these times and the energies coming in, we're able to our discernment is getting better. We're able to discern. So there's a lot of people out there that can just simply look and see right through the BS. And that's what's happening. And Vladius is asking for a recap. So what we have is clashes going on in Venezuela, and perhaps, there's reports that it is a coup attempt. It doesn't seem that there's really any strong military forces opposing the Maduro military forces. So it seems like there's no defections there. Really what we've seen, and it looks like we're losing satellite from RT, really what we've seen for the most part is just civilians or random people, a lot of them with their faces covered, just throwing things. Yeah, it looks like everybody's having a hard time getting video there. This reminds me of what was playing before, so I'm not sure if they're looping. And this is NBC News. You gotta be suspicious, obviously. So I haven't seen military on military or heard anybody talking about military on military. So Juan Guaido's asking for anti-government protests and military defections. And over here on NBC News, it says about an hour after Guaido spoke, calling for this uprising, Maduro's communications minister said the government was confronting a small group of military officers looking to promote a coup against the president. So we call on the people to remain on high alert to, together with the glorious Bolivarian National Armed Forces, defeat the coup attempt and preserve the peace. In a video posted on social media early Tuesday, Guaido was flanked by a small group of soldiers outside the La Carlota military base in the Venezuelan capital of Caracas. And he said, "Today, brave soldiers, brave patriots, brave men attached to the Constitution have followed our call," said Guaido, the head of the National Assembly, who has called himself the country's interim president. "Today we are counting on the people of Venezuela," he said. "Today the armed forces are clearly on the side of the people. They are on the side of the Constitution." And he called on the military and Venezuelan people to join him in nonviolent protests against Maduro. Though he spoke alongside a group of soldiers, it was not clear how much the military support he had. Eyewitnesses told Miami Herald that thousands of anti-government protesters had taken to the streets of Caracas in support of Guaido, amid reports of gunfire and confrontations. And there was definitely a lot of gunfire going earlier. Hundreds of Maduro supporters gathered at a rally beside the presidential palace, where security forces were deployed on the perimeter wall, chanting slogans of support. Maduro wrote on Twitter that he had spoken to Venezuela's military leaders, and they had shown total loyalty to the country and the Constitution. He also called for maximum popular mobilization to assure victory. And Guaido addressed a crowd of his supporters later Tuesday morning in Caracas, saying that through a loudspeaker that today we know that all Venezuelans are in favor of change. And he was joined by detained activist Leopoldo Lopez, who said he had been freed by members of the military. And in a post on Twitter, Guaido said the end of the usurpation has been initiated. And we see Bolton speaking.
I think it's fear. I think it's fear of the 20 to 25,000 Cuban security forces in the country. I think it's fear of the consequences if adhering to the constitutional mandate of the interim president fails. But I think really now what we're seeing is the people of Venezuela, this has been building for a long time, that if this effort fails, they will sink into a dictatorship from which there are very few possible alternatives. It's a very delicate moment. I want to stress again, the president wants to see a peaceful transfer of power from Maduro to Guaido. That possibility still exists if enough figures depart from the regime and support the opposition, and that's what we like to see. We want to see Defense Minister Pedrino, the Chief Judge of the Supreme Court, Michael Marino, in particular, Rafael Hernandez Dalla of the Presidential Guard. Yes, sir.
Ambassador, what happens if Guaido is not able to take power today? What's the next step?
Well, I think it's possible this situation could persist. I think the people have shown they're prepared to protect Guaido. We don't see any indication that there's any substantial part of the military that's ready to fire on innocent civilians, their fellow countrymen. We know that the Cuban organized colectivos, these thugs, these motorcycle gangs that the Cubans have put together, are out protecting certain buildings controlled by Maduro, not the military, but the colectivos. This really demonstrates the depths to which the Maduro regime is sunk, that they're using these Cuban directed thugs to conduct their affairs. And it's one reason why I think there's such overwhelming public support for Guaido. It needs to be translated into a transition of power. Sorry.
Is the U.S. prepared to use any option, including the military option, to support Juan Guaido?
Let me say two things to be very clear. Number one, we want as our principal objective the peaceful transfer of power. But I will say again, as the President has said from the outset, and that Nicolas Maduro and those supporting him, particularly those who are not Venezuelan, should know is all options are on the table.
Ambassador, on the
support other than tweets of support, and is this a coup?
Sorry, say that
Is the
again.
administration providing any other type of support other than tweets of support, and is this a coup?
We're providing support in a variety of respects. Certainly we have done everything we can to get humanitarian assistance into the country. We're doing a lot of other things, some of which I'm not going to talk about. And we're certainly working with the Lima Group, the Organization of American States, the over 50 countries that support Guaido's legitimacy democratically. And let me answer the last part of your question. This is clearly not a coup. We recognize Juan Guaido as the legitimate interim president of Venezuela. And just as it's not a coup when the President of the United States gives an order to the Department of Defense, it's not a coup for Juan Guaido to try and take command of the Venezuelan military. Sorry.
Ambassador, you said all options are on the table still for military action. And I wanted to ask you about a different military action that you did advocate, the Iraq War. Was that a mistake, invading Iraq?
As I've said before, I've got a lot of opinions I've expressed over many years in the public space. Those are my opinions. What I'm speaking about now is the policy of the U.S. government, and I've answered the question on force.
Do you feel that this moment that we're in right now is sort of a building block, or do you think it is the moment, the tipping point as to where something needs to happen?
Well, I think from the perspective of the humanitarian crisis that we face in Venezuela, I hope this is enough to tip Maduro out of power, because it's only when he and his fellow kleptocrats who have plundered the Venezuelan economy for the last 20 years are removed from power that we can put the Venezuelan economy back on its feet for the benefit of the people. The sooner Maduro is gone, the sooner is the possibility of justice and real economic growth for the Venezuelan people.
Can you address, were you surprised at all by today's action? Were you given a heads up? And can you address reports from Venezuela that some of the military officials that were supposed to support Guaido actually backed away when it was moved a day earlier?
I'll just say we feel very well informed about what's going on, and the point I was making a moment ago by naming specifically the Defense Minister, Vladimir Bedrino, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Mikel Marino, and the Commander of the Presidential Guard, Hernandez Dalla, as is well known to the opposition all across Venezuela, they committed to support ousting Maduro, and it's time for them now, if the Cubans will let them do it, to fulfill their commitments, and it's time for the rest of the military to show what their own families believe ought to happen, and that's Maduro needs to go. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. My question is, if actually Maduro forces fire against the people in Venezuela, Guaido's forces, will the United States send troops or act in use any kind of military action at this decisive moment?
Yeah. Well, as I've said, all options remain on the table. I'm simply not going to be more specific to that, but recall that right at the beginning, 3 months ago, we said that it would be a big mistake for Maduro and those supporting him to use force against innocent civilians. We feel very strongly about it. We felt that way then. We feel that way now. Yes, ma'am.
You see video footage of protesters seemingly being run over by tanks in the streets in Venezuela. What is the point at which you think it is enough force for you all to step in?
Well, we're watching very carefully what's happening. As I say, we've been trying to explain to everybody who will listen that we want people to go through with what they've agreed to do in terms of transitioning power. I don't doubt that there are colectivos, these motorcycle gangs organized by the Cubans, and I don't doubt there are some in the Venezuelan military itself who don't view the lives of their fellow Venezuelans highly. We don't know exactly what the command structure is now, other than probably it reports to Havana. I saw that film myself. It could be an isolated incident. We're not going to draw conclusions imprudently. It's something that we want to stress as much as we can, how closely we're following it and how much we want this peaceful transfer of power to proceed. I'll just take one or two more. Yes, sir.
Venezuelans, why don't you give them temporary protected status in the United States?
I'm sorry, I can't.
If you stand with Venezuelans, why isn't the U.S. giving them temporary protected status here?
Look, we have that question under review. Obviously, our hope is that we can get a change in the regime in Caracas as soon as possible so that Venezuelans can return and help rebuild their country. We don't want to send anybody back into what is now obviously an even more dangerous situation, and that's the policy we've been pursuing. Yes, ma'am.
Have you or the president spoken with Juan Guaido, and given the sort of influence of the Russians here, has the president spoken with or planned to speak with Putin? Do you plan to speak with the Russian counterpart?
Well, I'd rather not get into those kinds of conversations. I can tell you we've made it clear to Russia in both public and private statements throughout this that we regard the actions that they've taken in Venezuela as something that we regard with the utmost seriousness, and particularly now when innocent Venezuelan civilian lives are on the line, we expect the Russians not to interfere in what's happening in Venezuela.
And if you do
Yes, ma'am.
the assets
Yes,
on the
ma'am.
ground,
Is the White House considering an executive order, something to protect Venezuela from predators?
Well, we have followed in the financial markets all of the consequences of the sanctions we've imposed. We're looking to follow through with more specifics on those right along. And so there are a number of steps that are in preparation. I should also say that we have been planning for what we call the day after Maduro, for quite some time, and indeed we're thinking of having a briefing on Thursday or Friday of this week. I think we may speed that up, but we wanted to point out that it's been very much on our mind that we can provide a lot of assistance to the Guaido government when it assumes power to try and get the Venezuelan economy out of the ditch that Maduro has put it in. Those plans, obviously, we're moving ahead on, trying to refine them here in these recent days because things might move quickly. Let me just take one more question. Yes, ma'am.
Administration to labeling the Muslim Brotherhood a terrorist.
It's not a question about Venezuela. I'll take one Venezuela question. Yes, sir.
Mr. Investor, let's say this works. Guaido takes power. Everything is as the administration would like. Will the administration be turning its attention to other equally oppressive regimes, say Russia, Turkey, the Philippines, that are equally oppressive and destructive to human rights, sir?
Well, I just say in this hemisphere we've called out the troika of tyranny, Venezuela, Nicaragua, and Cuba. There's no doubt that Cuba in particular has benefited from the authoritarian government in Venezuela by getting below world market oil prices. That's going to cease once Guaido takes power. But our focus right now, as you can well understand, for the benefit of the people of Venezuela and because of the interest of the United States, is on this peaceful transition of power in Venezuela. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So that was Bolton, and obviously I think we expected to hear about what we heard. And like we were saying, it's, as he said, all options are on the table. If this doesn't do it, then they'll just up the ante. That's just what's going to happen. It's part of their plan. They really want this one. We were talking about the fact that Venezuela has possibly the most proven reserves of any nation on the planet. And then you also have the whole Libya thing going on right now, which also has some of the richest oil reserves on the planet. And I didn't get to put in this video I was going to show you guys before on the earlier video today. You know, Texas, Western Texas is sinking. It's literally sinking. And it's probably partly, if not mostly, concerned with because of basically all the oil that's been pulled from the earth. And obviously the earth is in travail. That's a given. And it's related to all these decisions. It's just so many bad decisions. But are they really just bad decisions, or is it part of a bigger plan? And so the boss says, America has fallen. Wow. Oh yeah. No, it's just like, if you guys are familiar with the book Behold a Pale Horse, that was written by William Cooper, who is deceased because of tax evasion. You know, he said that the plan, and this is way back, I think in the late 70s, I think, I don't even think it was the 80s, but he said basically, you know, the U.S. is just the military and police force of the NWO. And, you know, when you look at the military budget being so big, as big as it is, it dwarfs all the rest of the militaries in the world. And it's not about defense, it's about offense. It's about, you know, controlling resources, controlling people. And that's what we have going on. Yeah, all part of a bigger plan. You guys are all jumping on this. See, the people know now what's going on. We know. It's just so obvious. It's almost laughable, because it's like these guys are just horrible actors. They're really not good at hiding this stuff. It's just getting so easy to see right through. Yep, they're just like robots. It's just so obvious. And Chris P just wants to play his bowls and chant, and I totally understand that, because there's bliss and it gets you away from everything we see. And, you know, we've seen some atrocities, that's for sure. As we were covering before, I mean, on all these wars post 9/11, you know, more than 1 million people are dead since post 9/11 wars. You know, there was 2,000 something people that died on 9/11, but over 1 million are now dead post 9/11 wars. And, yeah, it might be closer to 2 million. It's just incredible. And, you know, the atrocities are piled, like we would say biblically, up high to the heavens. It's just one atrocity after another. And as I was telling you guys about this, you know, right here out of the sun, you see an armored truck just running over people. So, you know, you have people that are willing to do brutal things, you know, often just for a little payoff, or even just for the power of it, which is so disgusting and very, very inhumane, to say the least. It's just a very, very sad situation that people would do that. But they do. And there are people that thrive off of it, you know, that actually do thrive off of destruction and all the darker energies that are out there. I don't think it's the majority of people, but it doesn't take a majority when you have a minority that are willing to do just about anything for power and greed and ego. By nature, the people that are more spiritually evolved, so to speak, just simply would never contemplate anything like this. Even the ones that have been suffering with no food in the stores and, you know, everything that's going on across the globe, and, you know, here in Venezuela as well. It's all part of the machine. You know, Kennedy and Eisenhower warned us about this. You know, they warned us about the secret societies and the MI6 that run things. And of course, you know, a week after Kennedy made his famous speech, he was gone. All about ego. So, JMAD asks, shots fired by the U.S.? Not by the U.S. so far that we know, nothing overtly. Not to say that there couldn't be contractors, wearing some black masks and mixed in with the people throwing things. You never know. That there could be, most definitely, some things going on covertly. And since the military does not appear to have rallied behind Guaido en masse, I think that the more this goes on, the more likely it is that you will probably end up seeing some direct military action, perhaps from the U.S. And that would be a horrible thing, most definitely. So a lot of people have talked about feeling something major is coming. We've heard the dates May 5th through May 7th, somewhere in that time frame. I've heard from some of you about this one psychic who's really accurate, who was saying, to perhaps not travel on the 7th, just because she felt that there could be something that happens on that day. And again, when people make dates, usually they don't come out. But every now and then, actually talking about William Cooper, he knew about 9/11 a month before it happened, and he talked about it. And I think that he ended up leaving this world about a month later. So, interesting. Most definitely interesting. And it's so sad. It's just the common people, the average people, that, are suffering. And I don't think it's going to be, long for our channels as well. So I think, it's nice to have channels out there that can do cover things and get people together. But it most definitely feels that that's coming to an end, and I wouldn't be surprised if we were all pretty much gone as far as the truther channels in a year's time, maybe less, because things are just getting clamped down on so much. It's just amazing. But at the same time, ultimately, we have to have the change in the world, and perhaps this is one of those things that's going to wake people up to an even higher degree. Paris said about gematria. I don't know I haven't seen anybody break it down. There is a gentleman, I forget what his name is, that does a really good breakdown on gematria. Yes, we definitely have to get through this, and we have to band together, and we have to just tell them that we don't accept it anymore. And that really is going to take people, leaving the military, and, just refusing to go and do things, to go and do operations in countries that we know it's really just all corporate warfare. That's all that's going on. It's gotten to be just so obvious that it's just corporate warfare. Jonathan Kleck is good with gematria. I'll have to check him out. And Bicycle Rider Forever says, we're going to watch the Strait of Hormuz. Yeah, that could definitely be it. There's that Nostradamus prophecy of a melting of a fleet, a literal melting of a fleet from something that sounds like a nuke. It gives great heat and literally boils the water and melts the fleet. So, a lot of these things, I do think that we could change things. And I think there are all sorts of different realities playing out, and we could switch timelines and things like that if we get enough people to shift consciousness and to really force the change, because there has been some change. For all this negativity that we're seeing, which keeps increasing, there are some positive things going through as well. And there's actually been some court orders that have gone against the big corporations. And, it's a matter of making as much change as we can locally and stepping out of the matrix as much as possible. Chris says massive demonstrations in Brazil. I'll have to look into that as well. And Stardust is saying, I hope you all have a plan for yourself. We've talked about safe zones and stuff, and honestly, there's some areas that may be better than others, but anywhere you look, there's issues. We've always thought, well, maybe, escape to the mountains. But in the mountains now, with all the rain, we have landslides and mudslides. And the earth is moving big time. And honestly, I agree. One of my good friends, Dave, over in the UK, he just spent 3 days doing, and I hope he doesn't mind me sharing this, a water fast. And he came out of it, and he did nothing but meditation besides that. And he came out of it feeling that, May we're going to see huge earthquakes. And of course, Nostradamus talks about the great quakes in May. And maybe this is the year. But besides that, we could see a buildup. If you caught this morning's video, there's slow slips going on everywhere. And, it could quickly just devolve into, a great quake after another great quake, and it feels like something like that is going on. We're seeing quakes in really unusual places. And I shared with you guys before that one of my friends that's not too far from here, she lives about 10 miles from here, they have a well that's 800 feet deep, and their well water went from being, nice and cool, like 40 and 50 degrees, to warm and even borderline hot. That's not a good sign. And these are ancient mountains here, so that is most definitely not a good sign. And if there's magma going, in some places that it typically doesn't, who knows what we're going to see. We saw another massive sinkhole down in Indonesia. It's crazy, and it feels like everything has really started since, the eclipse and then the conjunction in September 2017. It really feels like it, so some that believe that this is the tribulation, well, it's kind of hard to argue with the earth changes that we see. And we just don't know what percentage is real and what percentage is manipulated, because there is weather warfare. There are all sorts of ways of manipulating things. And the more we learn about CERN, the more we realize that it's an interdimensional machine as well. So, who are they talking to, contacting? What type of energies are they pulling in? Are they actually disrupting the very fabric of the planet? I got some photos. I got to go through photos again. I took some photos last night myself when I was doing my exercise, running up and down the hills. And I don't know what it was, but it was something that reminds me of what a lot of people have seen in the clouds, where you would think it's the sun, but it's not the sun. But it was definitely planetoid looking, and I don't believe it was the moon, according to the moon phase, because it was round. And it wasn't where the moon was supposed to be at that time, but it was definitely something solid, and I could see the clouds going past it, and many believe that Nemesis system is here as well. And Nibiru. So, there's definitely a lot going on. A lot going on, my friends. There's so much going on right now. Although the thing that has hit me for this year is that it feels like this could be the year that they really do start that Third World War that Albert Pike talked about. And it could be the case, because it does feel like something like that is coming. But yes, as Dark Crusher says, I will not sink to anger and distrust. Well, yeah, we shouldn't. I mean, these things could make us ticked off, most definitely, and we are ticked off. But, violence and anger only begets violence and anger. And, one violent revolution, it just replaces the other. And we see where the world has gotten through that. Basically, we're in a never-ending negative karmic cycle. And I think that's part of the plan as well. So Janet says Wormwood is coming. Sassy Susie says the mood feels a little gut-wrenching. This feels dirty. Yeah, that's what I felt. That's totally what I felt. It almost makes you want to either throw up or cry, when you see it and feel these energies. And there's a real heaviness out there. Definitely a sense of foreboding. Over here on the other feed, somebody says, talks about Erdogan, and yeah, I think Erdogan is a key player in all this. He definitely has made some statements that are pretty scary, kind of semi-condoning genocide. We definitely have some real winners on the world scene right now, that is for sure. Crystal Light says, I believe the planetary system is definitely here. The Schumann resonance is off the chain. It is yet again. And I think it's the planet reacting to everything going on as well. I mean, the planet's rising in consciousness, and we are too, though they're trying to basically slow our roll as much as possible. So if you see the Schumann right now, it's been going through tremendous energetic outbursts. Yeah, something is definitely going on here. Pretty wild to see it. Everything is changing. The consciousness is changing. And if you guys follow the Hopi prophecy, we're looking for the rainbow warriors that are going to band together and change this world in a positive direction, restore balance and harmony. These beings that are running our world feels like they actually have hatred and disdain for Mother Earth, for the planet itself. In Florida, they're having meetings over the algae blooms, the red tide and all that. So the government officials are talking about it, but they're not letting the public in. What is up with that? Not letting the public in when the public's getting poisoned from these blooms. And several people talking about Florida Marquis. And he's the one that's been telling us this is all coming for a long time. He's one of the channels that I'll check on a regular basis. And he had a video that was removed. One of the things he was talking about, which I have to agree with him totally, is if every state was to basically declare their independence and there was no more federal government, that would really slow the roll of the powers that be. It would be a huge, huge thorn in their plans. And, that sounds kind of crazy, perhaps, to us, but I totally think it's brilliant, and I think it would be great. Because when you think about the size of the federal government and, how nothing is even done constitutionally anymore. Basically, we don't even realize we basically do have a military dictatorship already. People just don't realize it. So can you imagine if that was the case? Texas totally on their own, California on their own, Florida on their own, every single state on their own. There's such a disparity in what we, as individual states believe and feel. There's, obviously, say New York and California, they're very different than Texas and, for instance, or South Carolina, or Mississippi and Alabama. Yeah, they're so different. It's night and day. And perhaps things could be done better at the local level without all this massive government. Because it's by the massive government that they control us. Starbucks 777 says definitely a fake two-party system. It's an autocracy. Yes, it is. You're right. Totally. Totally. So, my friends, I want to thank you guys for joining me on this one. This is really important, so I wanted to share this with you guys, and as long as they don't shut down the computer on me or the channel, we'll be up and doing this again. I'm glad this worked. Sorry if the sound's not perfect. I'm just happy to be able to communicate because I know that is all coming to an end probably fairly soon for all of us that have been what we will call truther channels. Yes, stay positive, people. We need to stay positive. So, we need to go within as much as possible, connect to Source, to God, to Jesus, to Buddha, to whatever you believe in. Anything that lifts you up spiritually, and also root to the earth, ground to the earth, get your feet bare on the earth. And in my QiGong, I've had experiences where I felt the complete heartbeat of the earth, and the energy I'm feeling now from the earth is most definitely one that is disconcerting, and that the earth really does feel like it's in travail. And most definitely these are the birth pains of the new era, the new time that's to come. But we are going through this roller coaster ride right now, so we need to definitely ground ourselves. Don't get caught up in the negative as much as possible. Obviously be aware, because you don't want to not be aware that something is going on. But try to stay as rooted and grounded and pull together as much as possible. That's so important right now for us to get more united and move forward as a union of people in a positive way, and just demand change. We really have to demand change. We have to get ourselves pulled away from the machine as much as possible, whatever that looks like for you, and really listen to the inner voice within for guidance, because we are going to need that guidance from above in these times, most definitely. So, my friends, as always, I look forward to your comments and your support on Patreon and Ko-Fi as well. That means everything for us moving forward, as we've shared, with the demonetization and just everything going on. It's really not going to be survivable for a lot of the channels. And so, your support is definitely appreciated. So, my friends, as always, God bless, stay safe, stay alert. Namaste.